Welcome back, and we will continue our journey through Blackboard Learns. And today we're going to add a content folder to the class that I'm working in. And so here we are at the home page for my Chemistry Honors Period 1, and we go to Content. And when I open Content, we see the learning module we created before. And we're not actually going to add anything to this learning module right now. We're going to add actually a piece of content for the class. So I'm going to go to Build Content, and this time I'm going to choose Content Folder. Now, a content folder allows you to group a bunch of material. In this case, I'm going to create kind of a toolbox for the students to use for chemistry. So we're going to call this the Chemistry Toolkit. Spell that right, kit. And we're going to go to here, and I'm going to say forms, formulas, formula sheets, and periodic table. Okay, so we're going to permit users to use this, to see this content. We're going to track the number of views, and we're going to go ahead and submit that. So notice it put it second in the list. So what I'm going to do is recognize that I actually spelled toolkit wrong. So I'm going to fix that first by choosing that drop down arrow, going to edit, and I'm going to go ahead and fix that spelling. And toolkit, we're going to make that 2 words, toolkit. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and submit that again. And it put it second in the list. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight that, and then when I get this yellow bar over here, that reminds me I can then move this up. So I'm going to put this first in my content. And now I'm going to actually add content to that toolkit. So I'm going to click on the title of the object I just created. I'm going to go to Build Content, and I'm going to add several files. So we're going to add a file, and the first file we're going to add is the periodic table, and I'm going to make this blue just so that both my students and I recognize this as part of the toolkit. And I'm going to go ahead and browse my computer, and I've already created a folder where I've put some Blackboard stuff, so I made a Blackboard stuff folder, and here is my periodic table. So we are going to actually, my periodic table is actually a web version, and it's a little larger than the frame for Blackboard, so I'm going to actually have this open in a new window so it comes up clean for the students. Permit users to view. I like to track. You don't have to, but you can, and I'm going to go ahead and submit that. I'm also going to add another piece of content to this toolkit. I'm going to add a graph paper template for students to download whenever they need to use graph paper. And again, we're going to make that blue because it's part of the toolkit. And browse my computer, and that is LaSalle graph paper. So I'm going to go ahead and open that, and I apply the blue. I forgot to do that before. And I'm going to go ahead and open in a new window so they can print it and keep Blackboard open. And I'm going to go ahead and track how many students actually use the graph paper. Go ahead and submit that. Let's add a third file just for practice. And I'm going to add here acids and bases, scales, and conversions. And again, I spelled that wrong. Heavy little finger on the shift key. And again, I'm going to make that blue as part of the toolkit. And I apply that color. I'm going to browse the computer and pull up acids and bases, scales, and conversions. That's a PDF file. And I'm going to have that open in a new window. That way, if they're working on something in Blackboard, they can open the PDF and it will be a separate file, so they don't have to keep opening and closing in between. So then I'm going to go ahead and track how many times the students use that, and we're going to submit. So I created this toolkit of several things that will be used throughout the year, and I want to see what the students will see. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the eyeball, actually two arrows revolving around the dot, and this opens the student preview. And the student preview, you'll always get this orange bar that reminds you you're in the student preview. So they will always get this page as we talked about. This static column on the left takes us to content. Here is the chemistry toolkit we just created. That's the content folder we've created. There's the learning module we created before in the other videos. I'm going to go ahead to the toolkit. Here is the periodic table, so we open that up and it comes up in a separate window, and that's our periodic table, and students will be able to use that while they're working on other material. So we'll go ahead and close that. Let's look at the graph paper. So the graph paper opens, and oh, we've got buffering going on. I will check on this later. So let's go ahead and check the conversions. And this opens up in a separate page, I hope. There it is. And there is the scale factor that the students will use for acids and bases. So we have the files, and I'm going to add one more. So let's exit the preview. And remember, it asks us, do we want to delete anything we may have changed in the student view? That's always recommended, so I suggest you just continue there. And then we go back to my workstation. We're going to go to content. Since I'm adding to the toolkit, I need to open the toolkit. I'm going to go ahead and build content by adding a file. And this will be the gas law formula sheet. And we will go ahead and browse my computer. And here are the gas law formulas. And I will go ahead and open that in a new window. Once again, anything I want the students to be able to open and still work in Blackboard, I'm always going to open in a new window just so that they can toggle between two things at once. And then I'm going to go ahead and track how many times the students use that. Go ahead and submit. And there is that gas law formula. Now, as we see, I didn't change the color. So I'm going to go back in. When I highlight this gray drop-down arrow, I can now edit. And when I edit, I'm going to go ahead and change the color. And that way everything stays uniform. And go ahead and apply. Now, I don't have to scroll down because I know I already did the rest of that. So I can just go to the submit button on the upper part, upper right. Submit, and now everything is uniform and my toolkit is starting to build nicely. So I can add to this toolkit throughout the year, add more things so as I see students' needs. Hopefully this was helpful for you in understanding what a content folder could be used for and reviewing how to add content to a part of your lesson plan or your lesson for your course. So once again, I hope this was helpful, and continue working on your Blackboard. Have a great day.